Welcome to the 30-minute drill. I'm Francesco Terranova alongside Maros, Ademac, and Alec Oppenheim. Today, we will be talking about Week 5, our favorite games for Week 6, our favorite fantasy picks, and the MLB postseason picture. So, to start off, we're going to be talking about Ezekiel Elliott and that Cowboys offense. Really high-powered and definitely doing great things in the powerful NFC East. So, Maros, what are your thoughts on that game?
The two biggest positions for the Cowboys, two biggest positions for any football team really at quarterback and running back, both come in questionable situations at the start of the season. Cowboys at the rookie running back, don't really know what he's going to be like, and Tony Romo obviously going down early. But all questions have been answered in positive ways here. Ezekiel Elliott's been leading the league in rushing yards, obviously a fantastic achievement as a rookie. And Dak Prescott's been a really consistent, reliable, almost mistake-free quarterback in the absence of Tony Romo, so nothing to be upset about from the Cowboys.
Yeah, definitely a lot of great things coming out of that organization. Dak Prescott causing that question, really blowing up on social media, whether you put in Romo or Prescott when he comes back, and then some people are saying Sanchez, but that's never going to happen. So moving on to probably the biggest story of the week is Tom Brady coming back from that 4-game suspension with that Deflategate. So coming back with such a strong outing, Alec, what are your thoughts on Brady and the Patriots?
I think Brady did exactly what he needed to do coming back from that 4-game suspension. He threw for over 400 yards against lacking Browns defense, threw for 3 touchdowns as well. And Bill Belichick has really had a great game plan in those weeks before. They had Brady with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett. But they went 3-1 in those first 4 games, and they did exactly what they needed to do, beating those tough teams and getting 3-1. For Brady to come back, and now let's just see what they can do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Brady's a very high-powered competitor, and without those wins, it really will mess up a man's mentality. So to get those wins and then really shut down the 0-5 Cleveland Browns is definitely something to look forward to. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the Broncos and Falcons. Really, the Falcons have come up out of the NFC South as a real competitor and a vie for the NFC Championship. Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman really leading that offense. But don't forget about Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Really talking about this team, this is a possible playoff team. Roche, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, when you were describing the players to look out for, and you included 2 stellar names and didn't even include Julio Jones in the initial conversation, that's when you know how deep the Falcons are and how many offensive weapons they have. Matt Ryan and Julio Jones obviously been together for a while. There's a solid chemistry with the Falcons. You can tell they really know what they're doing out there. And I mean just an offensive force to be reckoned with in the NFC.
Yeah, really a strong running back core, and then the passing game from Matt Ryan, who I believe is in fact leading or in second in the league in passing yards. Definitely a good fantasy pickup that we might be talking about later. So moving on to our last game of Week 5 that we're going to be talking about, the Giants and the Packers. Really a great rivalry, especially in Lambeau. Always a great atmosphere at those games. OBJ having a last-second touchdown, but not enough to get the win for the Giants. Alec, what are your thoughts on that game?
I mean, the Giants had a great start to the season, going 2-2, I believe.
Well, 2-0, and then
2-0.
Losing back-to-back games.
Yeah, now they're 2-3.
2-3. Losing to the Packers.
Yeah, Odell Beckham, as you mentioned, he had that touchdown at the very end of the game, but the Packers just outplayed them. The Giants their whole offensive line is just hurt. They're very sloppy. They play very sloppy, and as we know, last week against the Vikings, Odell Beckham had a little temper tantrum, and he's sort of known for that, as he fought with Josh Norman last year and this year a little bit. And the Giants just need to buckle him down, get him to play, get him to do. They need to keep his emotions in check for the rest of the season, and they're also losing their 2 running backs in Rashad Jennings and Shane Vereen. And when they get those back, I think they can really be contenders for the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely a strong, high-powered offense. And OBJ did get his emotions back in control. If you saw on his gloves at the game, they said, just smile. And later on, after that touchdown, he gave a hug to that kicker's net that gave him some trouble later on. Well, that's all for now, but stay tuned because when we come back, we'll be going over our favorite games for Week 6. Welcome back to the 30-minute drill. So to start, we have a lot of great games coming up in Week 6, one of them being the Eagles and Redskins, an NFC East matchup. Definitely something to look forward to, especially with Carson Wentz really having a great year, and the Redskins sitting at third place, but still with a strong 3-2 record. So Maros, what are your thoughts on that game?
Really, this will be a really testing game for the Redskins, having their number one tight end go down recently, and Vernon Davis having to step in for, who's that?
Brent Selleck.
Yes. So, obviously a huge loss in losing a powerful skill position, reliable for a lot of yards, touchdowns. So the Redskins are going to have to bounce back against the Eagles team that's really looking to prove themselves with Carson Wentz. I mean, coming in hot, blazing with a 3-0 start, I think it was.
Yeah.
And, just two teams really wanting to prove something, so it should prove for an exciting matchup.
Yeah, it's actually my bad. It's Jordan Reed, not Brent
Jordan
Selleck. The opposing team right there. But yeah, definitely should be a great game between those two. I'd say high-powered offenses definitely can make a run for the division, but with the Cowboys sitting up top, not much glory they could stop them. So moving on to the Chiefs and Raiders, two great teams. The Chiefs were on an 11-game winning streak to start off the season, continuing from last year. But have kind of fallen off here. Guys like Travis Kelce not really producing. Alex Smith not having the year we thought. But the Oakland Raiders really coming back after a slump. You being a fan definitely can account for this. Derek Carr being a great face for the franchise for the Raiders. So, Alec, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, the Chiefs' 11-game winning streak in the regular season, that was snapped by the Houston Texans a few weeks back. And ever since then, they really haven't been the same team they were, going 2-2 thus far. And the Raiders, they've been the big surprise. In their first 5 games, they're 4-1, with that one loss to the 4-1 Atlanta Falcons, so nothing really you could do there. And Derek Carr, he's just a very good quarterback. He's usually going to his go-to option, Michael Crabtree, who doesn't really drop any passes, or Amari Cooper, the second-year guy out of Alabama. And they're looking to get Latavius Murray back. He was out last week with an injury. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs, maybe Jamal Charles might have an expanded role this week, as he hasn't really done anything this year, with Spencer Ware getting the bulk of the carries. Yeah,
injuries has plagued both running backs for the Chiefs and the Raiders. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the Colts and Texans. Definitely a lot of people have said with the Colts that Andrew Luck is the reason why they're not winning, but they definitely wouldn't be winning any more games without him with that contract. So the Houston Texans, really a lot of confusion, a lot of people saying they're not the same team from last year. So Marosh, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, just as much questions on the Houston end of the quarterback situation as with Andrew Luck. Osweiler, you saw decent numbers at the start of the season, but followed by a few interception-heavy games. And I mean, there's a lot of questions to be answered with Osweiler, obviously, but in a situation, a rivalry match at Houston, at home, I mean, if you're up for the challenge, I feel like people will respond positively in big situations like that. So it's up to Osweiler to decide whether or not he wants to show up for this game.
Yeah, and on both ends of the offensive side, they have very great wide receivers, all-pro wide receivers, in DeAndre Hopkins for the Texans and T.Y. Hilton for the Colts. Definitely two great guys that we should expect putting up great fantasy numbers, considering both of these defenses have definitely lacked, considering J.J. Watt is definitely not 100%, nor is anyone else in the NFL. But we should be seeing a lot of fantasy points coming out of that game. So a lot of great games coming up in Week 6. But who are the fantasy picks that could win your league? Find out when we come back.
For more information on advertising on Wayne Hills TV, contact Mr. Hookstraight at jhookstraight@wayneschools.com.
With so many great players, here are some sleeper picks to win your league. Starting off, we're going to talk about Adam Thielen from the Minnesota Vikings. Really a great player on that high-powered offense of the Vikings. They've had a lot of injuries with Teddy Bridgewater, but Sam Bradford has stepped up for them. So as you see by those numbers, Alec, what are your thoughts on Adam Thielen?
I mean, Adam Thielen, he wasn't really expected to do much. He was undrafted out of MSU. But the Vikings picked him up in 2013, and he's really stepped up as a receiver. Remember Laquan Treadwell, their first-round pick this year? He took his spot as the starting receiver, and he's really the go-to guy. Doesn't drop many passes. He's very efficient. He's hard to tackle, too, and he gets the ball a lot of times during the game.
Yeah, definitely a very fast guy in the NFL. A real compliment to Stephon Diggs, taking a lot of the load off him as he was relied on a lot last year. Moving on, though, to the tight end from the San Diego Chargers, Hunter Henry, taking over for the injured Antonio Gates. really had a great night last night with 3 receptions, 1 touchdown. Like you said, an undrafted free agent from MSU, a real great player. So, Maros, what are your thoughts on Hunter Henry?
Anytime where Antonio Gates goes down and you're going to get tight end 1 numbers against a quarterback or with a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, you're going to see a lot of fantasy numbers. Obviously, the guy's got a lot of talent, knows how to throw the football and put some fantasy points up on the board, both at the quarterback and at the tight end position if you're throwing the tight end, obviously. So, I mean, with Phillip Rivers at the back, you could be assured that Hunter Henry's going to be a fantasy producer as long as Antonio Gates is out.
Yeah, the tight end position has been pretty weak around the NFL besides outliers like Greg Olsen and Martellus Bennett with that huge 3-touchdown game. Definitely Hunter Henry is someone that a lot of fantasy owners could be investing in the near future. Our last pick for this week is Jacquizz Rodgers. With both of Charles Sims and Doug Martin out to injury, what could we expect, Alec, from Jacquizz Rodgers?
I mean, he's a guy that he's bounced all around the league. He was first with the Bears, then I believe the Falcons, now he's here in Tampa Bay. He's a guy that he can power the ball through. He can get those tough yards. As it said, 30 rushes for over 100 yards. That's very impressive for a third-string back. And you're not supposed to get that kind of production when your first 2 guys go down. And he can be a very good producer. If he can score a few touchdowns, he could be a very solid fantasy running back.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of third-string running backs come up and do a lot of work in the NFL, Jacquizz Rodgers being no exception. And we also saw there some receptions, 5 receptions for 28 yards, but with also, like you said, his rushing game, having a 100-yard game, definitely takes a lot of the load off Jameis Winston, just a 2-year player coming out of FSU, but another great player in the NFL. So great things coming out of the NFL, but stay tuned for the postseason picture when we come back.
This broadcast is brought to you in part by Positano Pizza, the finest Italian cuisine and pizzeria. Show us your Wayne Hill student ID to get 2 slices of pizza or a bowl of pasta, plus a drink for only $5.
Welcome back to the 30-minute drill. Now we're going to be moving on to the MLB postseason picture. It's really been a wild ride. In the AL, we've had, in the ALDS, both teams have gotten swept. The Indians sweeping the Red Sox and the Blue Jays sweeping the Rangers. But it's a really tight race in the NLDS. Last night and 2 nights ago, we saw a lot of results with the Dodgers winning and the Cubs ultimately winning out. Maros, what are your thoughts on this postseason?
Really this postseason, it's been interesting, mainly as a guy whose baseball's not really his bread and butter. It's just been interesting from an outside perspective. The baseball world's getting a lot of attention by the Cubs and their not really miracle run. They've been tearing it up, but it almost seems like it with their World Series drought being so long. I feel like the Cubs are really an attention grabber this postseason, and people are going to want to focus on what they're going to do in order to stop their World Series drought.
Yeah, we'll be talking about predictions. If we could see that MLB postseason graphic, a lot of teams here vying for the World Series and a lot of teams that are qualified to win that World Series. Probably the favorite being the Cubs, as they did beat the Giants, so now they advance. And the Dodgers did, in fact, win 2 straight games to come back against the Nationals. So, Alec, what are your predictions for us to see in the World Series?
I'm going to have to say the Cubs and the Blue Jays. I don't think the Indians' pitching staff can overpower that Blue Jays offense. And the Cubs, they're great on both aspects of the game. Offensively and pitching-wise, they just overpower everyone. I mean, they almost lost to Madison Bumgarner and the Giants with scoring 4 runs in the 9th inning to win the series. But yeah, I think it should be a good matchup to watch the Blue Jays against the Cubs and see if the Cubs can win a World Series for the first time in almost 100 years.
Yeah, definitely. If the Cubs go to the World Series, a lot of great things coming from that Cubs organization. There's a lot of young players. With the Blue Jays, yes, I completely agree. That high-powered offense, I don't think can be stopped by the pitching staff of the Indians. But, Maros, for the World Series, that pitching staff in Chicago is much better than the one in Cleveland. Do you think that the Blue Jays can come out on top?
Honestly, I don't really see it happening because at the end of the day with baseball, you live by the bat, you die by the bat. If you have a solid pitching core, you're gonna be put in a better position to win championships at the end of the day. More consistent strikeouts it's just easier to throw the ball than hit the ball, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of great pitchers like John Lester, Jake Arrieta, Kyle Hendricks, all of them vying for the Cy Young. And Jake Arrieta, in fact, having the only no-hitter this year earlier back in April. Most people have, in fact, forgotten about that and his historic run last year. So a lot of great pitchers, a lot of great players. We saw a huge game last night with the Nationals and Dodgers. So a lot of things happening in postseason baseball, and maybe we'll see another Mr. October and Mr. November come up in the World Series. So that's all from the 30-minute drill. I'm Francesco Terranova alongside Maros, Ademac, and Alec Oppenheim. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.